The time of the industrialization was known as the golden age of the middle class. The bourgeoisie split into two groups: upper, which were those who owned land and factories, and lower, who owned mainly small businesses. There was another group called the proletariat who worked to earn wages. The public in general was much more educated. The aristocracy at the time was made up of the landowners. Some jobs were needed less because of the new technology, such as mechanics. A group called the Luddites became upset about this and began destroying factory machines. It became more difficult to move forward with work unless you had an education in the areas. So more people started learning skills for certain jobs. Women weren't needed as much for work and were unlikely to be included. More people began to marry for love rather than money or power. Families also began having fewer kids but cared more for them. Jobs more often chosen for women were paid less, and poor women were usually the ones who worked outside the home. The middle-class women began demanding more rights. Important supporters of women's rights included Olympia de Gouges, Henrik Ibsen, Mary Wollstonecraft, and John Stuart Mill. Life for the working class and proletariat started out stressful, but eventually things settled down and became easier. People played tennis and bowling during their free time, as well as attended vegetable and flower shows. Pubs were also important for people during this time. Children as young as 6 years old were allowed to work in the dangerous conditions of factories. The children who were abandoned in hospitals grew up working in the factories. Children were mostly scavengers and piecers, since they were small enough to fit underneath equipment to gather stray scraps. New farming methods and industry allowed for more food to be produced. Medical advances also helped to keep illnesses and death rates down. The population of Great Britain and Ireland alone went from around 10 million to 3 million.
Chartists wanted universal male suffrage in Britain. Their movement was in order to protest and fund Parliament to include this universal male suffrage. In the cotton mills, family members mostly worked together in early factories. They often worked together as an entire family unit in the factories. Children often worked alongside their parents with jobs like picking up scraps or piecing things together. Charles Dickens strongly focused on the ill effects of industrialization in his work. In one of his works, Dickens makes the argument that one of the most fatal elements of the Industrial Revolution was the thoughts of the humans. Oliver Twist specifically focused on lives in the workhouse. The Luddites were 19th century English textile artisans who protested against newly developed machinery that replaced man's labor. They later attacked factories in northern England and broke all of the new machines. The Parliament later criminalized machine breaking. The penalty for breaking this law was death. Poorhouses were tax-supported residential institutions to which people were required to go to if they couldn't support themselves. Many people didn't necessarily enjoy living here. Because of industrialization, the standard of living increased. Many new machines were built, and today's modern capitalist economy was all brought forward. The population also increased immensely, and most importantly, the Factory Acts were passed in Britain.